So I think we're ready to get started.
Yes, definitely ready when you are, Gemma.
Fabulous. So I'm going to pop my screen share on. As I said, do feel free to use the chat. If you want to unmute and jump in with questions, examples at any point, you're more than welcome to, but I know you might not wish to if it's been live streamed. If you want to put anything in the chat, I will refer to it as we go. So welcome to this session on time management, and I've titled it Overcoming the Challenges to Getting Stuff Done, because I think we're looking at time management from a problem-solving perspective, really. Normally people come to a session like this because they have an issue that they want to resolve. They want to get proactive about the way they're spending their time. Just before we jump in, my name is Gemma Perkins and I run an organisation called the Self-Leadership Initiative. I've seen a couple of familiar names on the chat anyway, because I work a lot with student unions delivering training programmes to officers, especially at induction, to union staff, and I cover a whole range of topics that are to do with soft skills development. So whether that's leadership, conflict resolution, project management, a lot of well-being stuff, and I like to do so in an interactive way. In the room, that might look like throwing a ball and running around. Online, I'm going to ask you, if you wish, to participate in some activities. I'm not going to throw you into breakout rooms because I know you may just be listening, but there are some reflective activities that you can have a go at along the way. So if you don't have already, you might want to grab a pen and paper just in case you want to participate later on. So the facets of time management is where I want to start, really, because I quite often get into a situation where somebody will call me and say, right, we want to book some training, we want to deal with time management. And actually time management is not one issue. There are lots of different parts to it. And so you have to really do an analysis and audit in order to work out which parts you need to address. And it may be all of them, it may just be some. Workload is a key. So I have a colleague who, a friend and colleague who also works in an organisation where they lost 5 staff, but they never replaced any of them. Everyone else just picked up the workload. No amount of time management skills is going to deal with the fact that that needs addressing. Sometimes an issue getting in the way of time management is unclear goals and expectations. And what that can mean is that people are doing too much or too little work on things, and it ends up causing problems later. So there's a lot of things around project management, strategy and planning that feed directly into your time management. Being able to prioritize is really important. And it wasn't until I got to about 16, 17 and did a leadership program myself that I realized actually being able to mindfully choose what I was going to do first in order to achieve my goals was important. I've put here estimating time, and the reason for that is that quite often if we are scheduling our day, we might think that something will only take half an hour when it actually takes an hour, or any variation thereof. And so because we're quite bad at estimating time, that has a knock-on effect on whether we hand a piece of work to our team member for them to look at it next, or whether we allocate enough hours in a particular day. And when one thing spills over, it creates a domino effect for the next thing. So actually learning to judge how long things will take is a skill in itself. Once we know roughly how long things are going to take, we have to schedule them. And that is more about the organisation part of time management. This is the thing that I get asked to do the most, because I think that's what jumps to mind. So a lot of people want to learn how to plan their diary better, but it might be that you're already very good at planning your diary, but something else is getting in the way, which is why I'm kind of showing this list of alternative facets to take into consideration. Your motivation is about how you feel about getting the task done. And lots of people underestimate their mood and their emotional response. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on this today with you, because if you're not motivated, what happens is you end up procrastinating. And for a lot of people, full-time workers, definitely students who are who you're supporting through their courses, through exam season, procrastination really gets in the way. And you can come up with an excellent schedule, but if you're not emotionally feeling engaged in that task, procrastination is going to happen. One aspect of time management that you might not expect can be assertiveness, and that's about your relationships with other people when workload is being set. I'm sure we can think of colleagues who are taking on too much, they don't know how to say no, and that feeds into their level of overwhelm. And a final one to think about is managing your environment. Have you set up a working space, conditions that allow you to concentrate, focus, and get tasks done? This has been a challenge over the pandemic, where people have had to literally move their entire environment to their home office, whether that is an office or whether it's your bedroom. But managing your environment also takes into account things like your digital communications, your level of light, things like that do feed into your productivity. And so when you're considering wanting to improve your time management, it's important that you notice all these different aspects that are coming into play, because it may be that you need to spend time on one or two of them, but not the others. And they all can have a knock-on effect on each other. So what I'll be doing in this session is touching on a few of these, just to give you a flavour of what we can be doing to improve our productivity and to get a healthier relationship with our tasks. Because we all know that the impact of poor time management is that we end up rushing, we're late for our deadlines, we may not be as productive because we're low energy, we're putting things off, we miss out on things, and therefore it damages our professional reputation. We can end up with stress and burnout. We might end up being dissatisfied with the work itself or with the role. We can have this sense of poor work-life balance, and that has been a real talking point over the last 18 months about how are we recognizing that we have needs outside of work, and our time management is really, really central to that. In student unions in particular, if work-life balance, dissatisfaction and burnout are on the rise, that's going to have a strain on your wellbeing services, whether that's your advice centre, your any counselling and things like that. And you could also have course dropouts. So there's a real need to have a look at the skills of effective time management in order to reduce all of these negative impacts. So that's it as far as preamble goes. What I'm going to do now is get into some activities, some models that will help you address some of the facets of time management. The first one I want to look at is prioritizing your tasks. And if you want to participate in this, I would welcome you to use the chat, use a pen and paper. This is derived from the Eisenhower matrix, and it was also added on by Stephen Covey, who's an expert in the field of leadership. And it's called, or I call it, the importance urgency matrix. That's what Covey calls it in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is a really, really straightforward tool for organizing your to-do list. So if you have got a pen and paper with you, I suggest you very crudely just put a cross on the page. Deciding whether something is important is about recognizing whether it's helping you to meet your own goals in life. Now, that might well be your work goals, but it can also be your personal goals as well. So when asking if something's important to you, you might want to think about, do you care about it? Is it going to help you achieve something that matters to you? Is that task in line with your values? If you can answer yes to those things, then maybe it's an important task. And I've sorted this into high and low. You can think of it as a continuum. So even though they're separate boxes, some of you may be more visual. You might want to use it like a scatter plot. You might want to put a task halfway between high importance and low. You might want to put it on the line if it's a middle importance. Then we have urgency. And urgency is about when does this task need to be done by? Is there a deadline? Is somebody waiting for this task to be done in order to do their next bit of work? And again, we can have high, low, or you can think of it as a continuum. The interesting thing about urgency is that it will often change over time. So a task might start as low urgency at the beginning of the week, but as the week goes on, it becomes more and more urgent because the deadline is approaching. So those of you who want to have a go at this, what I would invite you to do is just have a think about some of the tasks on your to-do list this week and scribble down where they belonged for you. Organize them into the boxes and just see what you notice. What often happens is that people have got in the front of their mind all the high importance, high urgency tasks. They're the ones that you tend to jot down first. But do keep an eye out for tasks that belong in the other areas as well, because they can be the ones that end up rolling over on our to-do list and getting forgotten about. So it's important to still pop them on this grid, even if you don't have the time to address them right now. If, as you're doing this, you want to share some examples in the chat, that would be really cool. We can have a look at what kind of tasks are on people's mind and where you've put them. An interesting question that comes up when I do this live in the room with people is, well, what if it's important to somebody else but not to me? And that's a personal judgment for you to make. When you're deciding how important something is, I would focus on yourself, because if it's important to somebody else, that might be more of an urgency issue. However, if they're a manager, or if, you know, it could be a friend, brother, if the relationship is important, then by comparison, maybe the task is going to be important as well, because you want to support that relationship. So I'm seeing a couple of examples in the chat. We've got completing an assignment under high importance. I'd be curious as to whether that's urgent at the moment or whether you've still got some time to do it. Really interesting point there about getting pressure from a CEO or maybe a manager to do something else. And that can add to that workplace stress, because you have the disconnect between what you think is important personally, what's important to your job, and what's important to other people in the organization. And that actually taps into a much wider skill set about every team member knowing what role they play, whether tasks are delegated appropriately, whether people are able to negotiate and have the skills to do so in a constructive way. So time management is never in a bubble on its own. We've got doing a workout under high importance. Again, I'm curious as to whether that workout is low or high urgency for you. And really good point here in the chat is that you might feel like you're in a firefighting role where, yeah, you think you've got, sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. Yeah, you think you've got a quiet day, but then lots of things get put on your plate. So that's a very reactive workplace where urgent things come in all at once, and it's very hard to use a model like this when you know you're going to be reacting and you haven't got the tasks yet. So this doesn't work for every single setting, but it gives you an overview of perhaps how to structure time that is yours to allocate. Just in terms of some examples then, things that commonly come up might be finalising a report. A few of you have said things like that. Certainly for the student body, revising for exams tends to fall in that top box. Maybe evaluating a campaign when it's finished. The high importance, low urgency box is full of things that matter to you, but either the deadline is far away or the deadline, there is no deadline. So I've also put revise for exams here because maybe in September we could still revise for exams, but they're not until the summer, so there's low urgency. there may be tasks in there that I'd really like to do some professional development. I'd really like to get round to reading this book. But because there's no deadline, maybe it slips to the bottom of our to-do list. Maybe we don't get round to it. Similarly with a networking events, wouldn't it be nice to meet some other people? Won't it help my career development? But I've got other things to do. The low importance, high urgency column tends to have things like reacting to emails. Obviously, there's some importance there, but compared to other tasks, it's more about satisfying somebody's needs, ticking a box, just sending off very quick jobs, but it takes up part of your day and it interrupts other tasks. People who I know who work in kind of communications or student unions, businesses, have this need to be putting things on their social media feeds all the time to show people what they're doing. So there's an urgency because, okay, we have to do it every day or however many times a week. Importance, each one doesn't have that much impact, but it needs doing on a regular basis to create presence. Perhaps handing work to others, doing jobs for other people. They've got a deadline, but it's not so relevant for your role. So that gives you a flavour of what might go in that box. If you were thinking about your personal, your home life, I like to use the washing up as a good example in here. So in the grand scheme of things, washing the pots is not a particularly important job to do, but it happens every day and there's an urgency to do it after every meal so that the kitchen doesn't get stinky and I don't get flies or whatever could happen if I left it. So those kind of tasks that come up on a regular basis and just need crossing off might go in this box. Now, hopefully, you don't have anything in that bottom right box, because if it's not important and it's not urgent, why are you doing it? In reality, stuff trickles its way into there. We don't tend to plan to do these things, but I'm sure we waste 20 minutes here and there scrolling on social media or doing other things that I would describe as faffing around. They're not important, they're not urgent, but we kind of get sucked into them out of habit, out of comfort. And they take up a slice of our time. And so it's worth being aware of what those things are for us so that we can examine whether we're happy with that, whether we want to handle it. So that's kind of what the grid looks like. Once you've got your tasks on there, the next step is to actually use it to schedule your day. Now, I said that this was covered in a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Stephen Covey invites his audience to guess where the most effective people spend their time. So I'm just going to give you a moment for those of you who want to play along in the chat. Which box do you think effective people dedicate the most time to? And the reason I'm asking is because this normally catches people out. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of examples coming through in the chat. We've got high importance, high urgency, high importance, low urgency, high importance, low urgency. Oh, yes, most of you are there. Well done. Okay, so your gut reaction quite often is the high importance, high urgency. Now, obviously, if you already have a lot in that box, yes, you need to crack on with it. But Covey says that really effective leaders spend more time in the high importance and low urgency because they've learned to prioritize. They do things before they become high urgency. Now, that may not be a helpful thing to share at this stage because, as I say, if you've got things in that box, you're going to have to just dedicate a big chunk of time to doing them. But once you've cleared the top box, putting those first things first is going to give you a real advantage and a real probably satisfaction and well-being boost as well. On the previous slide, I gave the example of, doing a CPD course or going to networking. Low urgency, but it's important to me, I want to do it. If you're only ever spinning plates and doing the high urgency tasks, you will never get round to doing that course or to doing that networking. And for a lot of people, that creates a little bit of beating yourself up, resentment, disappointment. Whereas if you can be kind of assertive and say, this matters to me, I'm penciling it in, this is when I'm going to do it, you're going to get a lot more out of your life, out of the things you want to achieve. So ideally, we want to be spending a bigger chunk down there. This top right box is all about meeting deadlines early. So revising for exams was in both places. Effective people tend to chip away at their deadlines so that there's not a big rush at the end. Now, I appreciate a few people have put in the chat that you're in reactive jobs and other people drop it on your desk. I'm talking more about examples where you're setting your own workload. If you're in a reactive workspace, there might be some discussions that need to take place about how do we look after staff well-being, how do we fit this so that it isn't as reactive, so that we give people maybe a 2 or 3 day turnover so that they can do things at a more healthy pace. The top right box, low importance, high urgency. There's 2 approaches we can take here. For things like answering emails, doing the washing up, maybe we just need to find the most efficient way. When I was doing social media posting for my business, I started by physically going on my phone once or twice a day to actually post it. Now I do it all, at the start of a week, I spend half an hour, I schedule them all, and that saves me tons of time. Lots of people have a system where they'll save up all their emails and just do a block of email responses. So if there's a system that helps you to do it quick, but still good quality, try and implement that. The assertive side of things is about recognizing when other people are dropping things in your lap. It doesn't necessarily mean saying no, but it means putting in boundaries. So it might be, yes, I can help you with that. I've got time next Thursday to do it. Or I can get it to you in 3 days. Or maybe that is not my role. I can show you who the right person is. And so it's a really important skill in your team that people are able to set boundaries, to say no, and to negotiate their needs being met. This last box, if it's not important and it's not urgent, can you cut it out altogether? And if there's something in that box where you feel, oh, I don't really want to cut it out, maybe that's a clue that actually it is important to you after all, and you need to put it in a different box. That's very much a whistle-stop tour of this model. If anybody's got any questions about it, I'll keep an eye on the chat. But I hope that it's a really simple way of just helping you to recognise the things you've got going on in your week and how to organise them. In a longer training session, I would get my participants to list their tasks for the week and then use this alongside scheduling tools to plan out either their day or their week by penciling in the high importance, low urgency tasks first, the high urgency tasks if there are some, and then just seeing what's left. And also, I'm a big advocate of well-being and work-life balance, so I would get people to use this for their personal life as well. That you might have things that you want to build into your day, like going for a walk, cooking your own lunch, socializing with a friend. You can use this model to make sure those things are going in there as well. Because when we look after our personal time, it makes us more effective and productive in our work time. Fabulous. I can't see any questions about this, so I'm going to shuffle on to the next section around time management, which is procrastination. And this is when we choose to delay a task or activity. So maybe we've done the time management tool, we've said this is important to me, but we just can't seem to get started. We intend to do it, but we never get to the action because procrastination happens in the middle. And there's a really cool equation that we can use to understand this by Piers Steel. And if you want, the reference for the book is at the bottom there, the procrastination equation, how to stop putting things off and start getting things done. I'll break this equation down, but what he's saying is that our motivation is our willingness to do a task. And if we're procrastinating, that is the opposite. We're unwilling to do the task. We can increase our motivation by understanding the different aspects of motivation. So our expectancy is how much we think we're going to succeed. Is it an easy or a difficult task? If it's easy, we're probably just going to crack on and do it. If it feels difficult, we're going to put it off. The value of the task is whether we're going to enjoy the task itself or the benefits of having done it. So there may be some things on our to-do list where, you know, oh, I really love having a good organize and sort out, so I'm going to get on with that. Versus things where we think, oh, I don't like it, you know, again, I'm going to put it off. On the bottom, our impulsiveness is our tendency to get distracted. If we're getting distracted easily by things going on in our environment, it's going to reduce our motivation. And the delay is the time between completing the task and getting a reward. So, you know, if you finish a report, but you don't get to hear feedback for a month, maybe that kind of puts you off because it doesn't feel as imminent. It doesn't feel as immediately rewarding. Whereas if things are in a reward loop, if something positive happens as soon as you've done it, that's going to be motivating. We can use this to kind of hack our motivation, as it were. What we want to do is increase our expectancy and value and reduce our impulsiveness and delay. So we want to make it more likely that we're going to succeed at a task. And there's lots of things we can do there, such as doing the pre-work, breaking it into chunks, getting support, expertise. We can increase the value by finding ways to enjoy the task more. Maybe we put on music as we're doing it. Maybe we do it with others to make it sociable. Maybe we commit to reward ourselves once we've done it, so that even if we can't make the task more fun, we link it to something positive. And we can reduce our impulsiveness by thinking about what normally distracts us. Can we change our environment? Can we switch off our phone? Can we make sure we've got everything we need right next to us so that we don't get distracted looking for a book or whatever it is? And can we reduce the delay by giving ourselves immediate rewards as soon as we've done it? Or perhaps even if we're collaborating on a team, encouraging team members to give each other a short delay between submission and feedback. So again, feel free to drop questions in the chat. I know I'm kind of throwing a lot at you here, but I'm hoping that this is giving you value and you can see how, in a very simple, and I suppose this is just giving you general examples. You'd have to put the specifics onto this yourself, but it gives you a recipe for changing the way you feel about tasks and hopefully getting yourself a little bit more motivated to do them. If you want more support with this, there is a process that you can follow. And what I will just do is pop a link in the chat to a tool where each of these 12 steps for overcoming procrastination is broken down into a series of coaching and reflection questions that you can take yourself through to work out what your relationship is to tasks and to help you understand, if you procrastinate, why, where that comes from and what your strategies are going to be for overcoming it, because everybody's slightly different. For some people, procrastination is about tackling their environment, whereas for others, maybe it's more about their sense of reward and motivation to do the task. And so following these 12 steps might help you to notice patterns in your procrastination and time management that you can create more positive habits for. So again, before I move on to the next topic, I'll just wait a moment and see if anybody's got any questions there. And then, as I said, hopefully that link, I don't know if it's come out as a web link properly, but if you go to my website, scroll down on the resources bit, it does say overcoming procrastination. You can download a 6-page tool that goes into a lot more detail on this. And it also has the reference for the Piers Steelbook if you want to read up on it in more detail. So, can't see any questions. I'll come back if they appear. But otherwise, I'm going to move on to the final tool I want to talk to you about, which is motivation and self-talk. This is a personal favourite of mine because I feel that it's very high impact, but very, very simple. So whenever you're about to start a task, you have an internal dialogue. You talk to yourself. And so whether it's doing the dishes, completing a report, you will say something. And it might be, oh, I have to do the dishes, or I'm going to complete the report, or I must. You fill in that blank. And the words that you put into that blank make a massive difference to how you feel. And so if you can reverse engineer that and choose words that help you to feel good, you're going to be more likely to succeed on the task. So what I would like you to do is have a think about a task on your to-do list. It doesn't matter if it's a work task or a personal task, but I just want you to have it in mind so that you can do a little experiment with it. What I want to tap into here is the idea that, broadly speaking, human beings are motivated by two things. We are either trying to get away from pain or towards pleasure. So this cartoon lady is running. Is she running because she's being chased by a tiger and does not want to get eaten to death? Or is she running because she's an athlete trying to win a medal in a game? Sometimes we can see the same behavior on the surface, such as revising for an exam, but the motives might be different. And so a student who's revising to not fail is going to behave a little bit differently and feel a bit differently to a student who's revising because they're aiming for a 2-1 or a first. So your psychology plays a massive part in your feelings. I asked you to choose a task. Doesn't matter what it is, walking the dog, doing the dishes, filing a report, anything you like on your to-do list. And what I would like you to do, either in your head or out loud, if there's nobody around, just say to yourself some of these words. I'm supposed to do the dishes. I should do the dishes. I must do the dishes. I ought to do the dishes. I've got to do the dishes. I have to do the dishes. I need to do the dishes. And you may even want to close your eyes and just settle into those words and really notice in your head, in your belly, how do you feel when you talk to yourself that way about this task? I'm supposed to, I must, I have to, I need to, I should. And if anybody feels happy to share, you might want to pop an emotion in the chat. What did that do for you? And lots of people will feel differently about this. This is about you experimenting and noticing what impact these words have on you, because you may not have considered that before. So I can see one example, it feels a bit stressful, feels a bit pressured. Somebody sighed, made somebody else disengage, feel deflated, worried about not having done something, feeling sluggish, dread's come up twice. So far, we've got a big pile of not very nice emotions, which may be a clue that we want to avoid these words. Things that often come up when I do this. Now, there are a few people who love these words and they say, you know what, I feel determined. This gives me a kick up the bum feeling. I must do it and I'm going to crack on. The people who have shared so far haven't been sharing that sentiment. We've got another one coming feeling slumped. What I often hear from participants is this idea of anxiety, pressure, frustration, or some people just describe it as feeling heavy in their belly. And actually that could be part of what's slowing you down in your time management. And that will feed into that procrastination monster that if I feel pressured, if I feel frustrated, heavy, if I feel dread, maybe I'll avoid it. And so your language is so, so powerful. If you did have a go at that task, I want you to just kind of shake it off because we're going to try some different words now. I want you to use the same task. That's really important for the experiment because then you know it's the words, not the task, that are changing your feelings. Now, these are the words that are associated with achieving a goal that we want, a pleasurable outcome. I have split them in half and I'm going to explain why. The top three, I want to, I'd like to, I would love to, they might not work all the time. So, you know, if you've taken your dog out for a walk, you may not love to clear up after it. It's just something you do. So if your task is something that, I wouldn't really like to do it, don't say that to yourself because it will feel disingenuous and your brain will notice that and you'll get a negative feeling. However, there may be tasks on your to-do list like, you know, doing a bit of CPD, reading something, seeing a friend that you would like to do. And if so, use these words. On the bottom, we've got the general action words. I'm going to, I can, I will. Use those if you don't really like the task, but you want to get that towards pleasure, motivation instead. So again, same task. You might want to close your eyes. You might want to breathe into this, but I just want you to say to yourself, I'm going to do the dishes. I can do the dishes. I will do the dishes. Maybe I want to do the dishes. Maybe you'd like to do your task. Maybe you'd love to do it. I'm going to, I can, I will. And just let those words float around. And notice again in your head, in your belly, what feelings are coming up for you now. It will probably feel different to the last set of words, but whether they're better or worse for you is down to individuality. So again, if a few of you feel comfortable sharing, I'd be really curious as to how that was for you. And the reason I framed this as an experiment is I am not really trying to tell you which words work for you. I want you to explore and find it out for yourself, because different people need different motivational styles for different tasks. So I'm seeing a couple of examples coming through now. We've got feeling a bit more energized, a bit more optimistic, action, determined, a sense of getting on with it. Oh, we've even got excitement. Wouldn't it be nice to feel excited every time we were trying to do something on our list? Thank you for the clarification there. I feel more neutral, which is positive. Now, compared to the previous words, maybe we felt negative and moving up to neutral is a good thing. Some people do tell me that these words feel neutral and because of that, they don't have the same kick up the bum pressure. So they're worried they're not going to do it. The first three words didn't feel anxious, but did feel disappointing because you associate it with things that never get done. Very, very interesting. Yeah, so we might say to ourselves, I'd like to lose weight, but I never do. So that's a really important point, is that sometimes those top three words, I want to, I'd like to, I love to, we water them down ourselves. And that's going to change the way we feel about them. So again, everybody's different. Thank you to those of you who did share. What often comes up is that some people feel a sense of determination, but instead of being determined not to fail, like the last words, this time I'm determined to succeed. I've got that. Yes, I want to get it done. Some people say they get a sense of focus, concentration. Others say, oh, there's no pressure in these words. I feel calm, I feel slower. And some people admit that, oh, because I feel calm, maybe I can put it off. Maybe like that, I'd like to lose weight, but I don't. Example, I'd only like to, it's not urgent. So I'm gonna, set that to one side. Again, just notice what it's doing for you. Gives people a sense of hope, a sense of choice. Whatever you felt, there's a reason why, and I want you to just understand it, because the power here is in you deciding what to say to yourself before you do something. Why do these language choices create strong feelings? It's because our brain has a conscious mind, which is the bit that we're engaging with, and the subconscious mind, which is processing an awful lot more information than we really recognize and pay attention to. And so if you say, I need to revise for my exam, I need to file that report, your brain kind of asks, well, why do you need to? Well, if I don't, I'll fail. And then if I fail, I'll end up having to resit the year, or I'll end up not passing the degree and having to get a lower end job. And then I will be in a working poverty and and it snowballs into a really negative situation. And your subconscious brain is holding on to that negative situation, and that's where the feeling comes from. Whereas if you flip it and just change, okay, I am going to revise for my exam, or I want to because I want to get this grade. Well, what happens if you do? Well, if I do, I'll be able to, maybe do the next bit of my study, or I'll be able to get this particular job, and I'll be able to move into this industry and have this career path, and it snowballs into something positive. So those feelings that you've identified yourself are coming from the subconscious, telling you a story as to what will happen if you do or don't do that task. The exciting thing about that is that you can stop it. You can't stop the subconscious, but you can bring it to your actual conscious brain. And so when you're sitting down to do a task, even if it's something as mundane as doing the dishes, I'm going to do the dishes because I want a tidy kitchen so that I can relax for the evening. If you tell yourself in the positive what you're going to do and why, what the good outcome is, you give yourself a better chance of being motivated. It's not magic. It won't guarantee. You still have to get up and put the effort in, but you give yourself a better shot because you've engaged your emotions. So again, we're just about to wrap up this bit and wrap up the session. If people do have questions, start them in the chat and I'll come to them after I've wrapped up. So drawing together the different things we've talked about over this time management workshop. I've shown you 3 different tools, which I really recommend that you keep going away and using. I've been using them for about 15 years now, and they never stop being useful. Prioritize your tasks to help you organize your schedule. And there's other support you can get on actually doing the scheduling. Use the procrastination equation in order to understand what helps you to get motivated, how you can control your environment, how you can understand your relationship to a task. And use motivational self-talk to help you feel good about tasks and actually get started. As I said at the beginning, there are still other aspects of time management that we've not covered here, such as your workload, boundaries, goals, estimating, scheduling, being assertive, managing the work environment and your personal environment. Time management's got a lot going on, but the more you develop your skills in these areas as an individual and within your teams, the easier time management will become, because you can create positive habits and patterns of behavior. And if we get time management right, It means that our deadlines and goals get met. We feel more productive. We are reliable in our reputation, which means we're more likely to get opportunities for promotion, be able to fit more into our day. We reduce our stress because we're not always spinning plates. That means we have a better work-life balance. We feel more confident, and we develop our self-efficacy, our belief that we can do the things we set out to do. So time management is really a skill set worth getting right. That's pretty much it from me. I will just put in the chat again. So if you want to download the procrastination resource, the website link is there. If you are interested in training workshops to support other aspects of time management or to work directly with your teams, feel free to pop into my calendar and book an initial meeting so that we can design something that fits the needs of your group. We're a little bit early, which is fabulous. What I'll do is I'll switch the screen share off. And if anybody wants to use this last bit of time to ask any burning questions about time management or a particular example, I'm very happy to stay on and address those. Otherwise, if you're happy, you might want to get a break before the networking session, which Jason outlined earlier before we started here. Thank you so much to everybody who's participated, and I hope that that was useful for you. Oh, and I'll put my email in the chat as well, sorry. Do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and socials as well if you wish. If you search for Gemma Perkins or the Self-Leadership Initiative, I'm sure you'll stumble across me.
Amazing, thanks Gemma. Not seeing any questions coming in via the chat. If anyone wants to raise their hand or bring anything up, please do. Otherwise, thank you very, very much, Gemma. That was fantastic. Some really interesting points, some good engagement. Thanks for getting involved, everybody. Do enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of SU21. If you're going to jump in that networking space, I'll be there very shortly. So thank you very much. Thanks, Gemma.